Live from a bunker in the heart of the Ozarks, a podcast that's just trying to keep the damage to a minimum. It's Sif Pop. Welcome to Sif Pop Weekly. We're streaming live most weekends or available to download later in your podcast feed. Unless, of course, you're a patron.
Patrons get perks.
Patrons get those perks.
Woo!
I'm your host, Aaron Dicer, and there's a long dormant piece of him that so very badly wants out. It's Andrew Ormsby, ladies and gentlemen.
Ahoy!
Each week we'll chat about movies, television, and whatever else from the pop culture universe is on our minds. And please welcome our guest this week. He still hasn't moved to Paris for some reason. It's Jon Negroni.
You can just call me nobody.
Jon, good to have you back, man. I feel like it's good that we're talking about Nobody this week because you are not aware of this, and there's no reason to make you aware of this other than I want to. But I feel like Bob Odenkirk for the last 10 minutes of my life, except technology or the bad guys punching me in the face. But we made it here, and we are recording a new Sif Pop for this week, and so glad that all of you have joined us, whether it be live on the video or later in your podcast feed. Jon, how you been, man? It's been a minute.
I've been okay. Yeah, it's been a little while since we talked, and I just feel like we're at the tail end of life getting back to normal, but it's like that transition period, you know. It's like it feels like the middle school of years, you know. It's just I just want to be in high. I don't want to. What, can I grow up already? And yeah, that's about where I'm at.
Yeah, it is. It is definitely right in that no man's land transition time where it's like I think I can. I think the new normal's about here, but you don't want to like cross your fingers too hard because you don't want to break your fingers. But yeah, no, it's definitely good to have you back, Andrew. How are you today? How are things going for you?
I just finished watching The Father about a minute before we did the show. So I'm trying to pull myself together, not to give you a hint of my feelings on the movie, but
it's two very traumatic movies today, but in very different ways. You know, one is in universe violence, and the other is in just kind of what it means to be human. So we'll get to all those places. We got a lot of other fun stuff we're, of course, going to do. We've got our buried treasure that we will get to. We've got a best ever challenge, one-person army movies this week that should be a lot of fun. And we will talk about The Father as well. But we're going to kick it off with a little bit of Nobody. Hutch Manziel, an underestimated and overlooked dad and husband, taking life's indignities on the chin and never pushing back. A nobody. When two thieves break into a suburban home one night, Hutch declines to defend himself or his family, hoping to prevent serious violence. His teenage son, Blake, is disappointed in him, and his wife, Becca, seems to pull only further away. The aftermath of the incident strikes a match to Hutch's long-simmering rage, triggering dormant instincts and propelling him on a brutal path. Bob Odenkirk in Nobody, doing something... I'm trying to think if we've ever seen him do anything really like this before. I don't think so. I think he's kind of stepping out into new territory here. There's elements of Saul Goodman here, but definitely not in the response area, at least that we've seen so far in that show. What did you guys think about Nobody? Did you like it, love it, dislike it, hate it, or it was just okay? Andrew, your thoughts first.
I am going to go with high side of okay. Close to liked it. Nice.
Jon?
Oh, I'm going to say loved it.
Nice.
Plain and simple.
I love that. I love a nice, big, strong loved it. I'm high side of liked it. So not quite as exuberant as Jon appears to be, and maybe a little more than you, Andrew.
Probably, yeah.
But yeah, I really enjoyed this movie. Jon, why don't you start off with your thoughts? What are some of your overall thoughts on the movie since you loved it so much?
I went into it not knowing anything about it, first of all, which the first time I'd really heard of this was just kind of like looking at the schedule for the year a bit, and I saw, Bob Odenkirk is in something. Didn't really pay it in mind. I did notice that Derek Kolstad, the creator of John Wick, that franchise, was the screenwriter. I didn't know that this was produced by David Leitch. All I knew was that it was like maybe some kind of action movie. I didn't watch the trailer or anything. And all of a sudden I start seeing like the reviews coming out. And then I was like, okay, cool. So I'm going to check this out. And I did. And I hope people go into it as fresh as they can without not knowing a lot, because if you read like the notes I was taking during this movie, it is so funny, the progression of me just trying to be like, wait, what? Like, what? Why is that? What are you doing there? Put that down.
Right.
And yeah, I think this is definitely the kind of movie that I got really caught up in the action of it, and I just started like overlooking all of the little nitpicks that I have for movies like this. Obviously, I think the big one is people are going to say it's a derivative of John Wick, and it absolutely is. It's trying to do the John Wick thing, but I just got such a kick out of all the like little flares of story they put in there, and I just love Bob Odenkirk in this. I did not expect it. Like, I know he like got in shape for this. I'm like so impressed with his regiment he must have gone through, because I think this movie is so good at showcasing how punches hurt and kind of like selling this idea to you. It does kind of get into weird territory toward the end. It starts to get a little bit Looney Tunes, but they make up for it. They make it so exciting that I didn't care. And so I just came away from it being thoroughly satisfied. I already want to see it again.
I want to respond to just one part of what you said, because there is the instinct to say, it's John Wick, they're trying to do John Wick again. And can we stop pretending like John Wick was the first, a man against everyone movie? Like, there's more Rambo here than there is John Wick in many ways. So yeah, no, totally. There's much more, let's just say, Home Alone here than there is John Wick. You know what I mean? Like there's an element of booby trap here that wasn't necessarily the John Wick thing. I just think it's interesting. These kind of movies have existed for a long time. Yes, it is derivative. It's derivative of a bunch of stuff. But that's the same way that Edge of Tomorrow is derivative of Groundhog Day. Like it's kind of a genre. So I don't put too much stock in that being a huge negative for this movie.
I'm going to push back on that, because I think that there are a lot of specific traits that you see plot-wise, thematically, or even just straight up copies of John Wick in this movie. Like, it's difficult to talk about because like the specificity of it all is in the realm of spoilers, but it felt like they were trying to build the same world that you would see in John Wick. There's a overarching theme of enemies, I guess you could say. And yes, can I just say Russian enemy is kind of a cliche,
Sure.
The big bad Russians and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of stuff that I wish I could just start spatting off, and I'm like, yeah, that's John Wick. But every single one of those things that we would say, yeah, that's John Wick, or yeah, that's something else, I kept going back to it going, those other movies did it better. They did it better. I'm not saying that this isn't good. There's a couple fight scenes in this, and I'm like, oh, I would just want to see that movie again just for that fight scene. But at the same time, I'm like, yeah, but I've seen it done better in so many different things. And if your movie feels like it's trying to just copy everything else without trying to be original, I don't see how I can, judge it on its own, because it's trying to copy everything else.
Yeah, I think we're going to agree to disagree on this. I think there are some major differences in this movie, specifically to John Wick, in that it is not trying to do any kind of fantasy world building here. This is meant firmly to exist in our universe. And there's something even very visceral about the violence in this movie that is a little less stylized than something like John Wick is. In fact, part of this character is not just, in fact, there's a part of this that is very much history of violence. I don't know if you remember history of violence.
Yeah, Viggo Mortensen at Harris.
Yeah. And there's a part of this where this character is, I get the feeling he is fighting the urge to always want to be part of this. He not only enjoys, where he goes in this movie, he enjoys like getting punched in the face. That is not something like I would necessarily say of some of these other examples that we're talking about. There's something a little more boxer fighter mentality about what he's doing here.
Yeah, he's a brawler.
Yeah, he's a brawler. Yeah, there's definitely a brawler more than a martial artist. He is a brawler. So yeah, it was enough different for me that although, in fact, I think even on Letterboxd, when I did just the little mini review, I started it off by, such and such meet such and such meet such and such meet such and such, like, because there's so many things you can draw from what's going on here. But I think it does become its own thing. I never felt like at the end, I didn't feel like, well, that was just a knockoff of this, because it draws from a lot of different things. I think it kind of combines them into its own recipe in some ways that I like.
That's how I feel too, because and that's what I was worried about. I was like, man, they're kind of doing some things here to sort of what Andrew, you're saying, where they use a specific technique, and we don't want to give it away, but like of building up a persona of like people being like, oh, don't mess with this persona. That's all I'll say. And that happens a few times. And I'm like, yeah, that does feel a lot like that what John Wick was kind of doing. But at the same time, this whole movie explores this like violence as an addiction, which I found really interesting. That was like the extra like salt on the meal that like pushes this for me, because as it started, I was like, oh my gosh, they're just doing this thing where he's like the schlubby, mediocre guy who just, it's playing into this power fantasy of like, you're only a real man if you do this and that. But then it like slowly turns a bit, and it just gets more interesting. Like there's a little bit more of a story behind that, instead of this easy, like, wouldn't it be great if you could just, Fight Club your way to feeling good about yourself? Instead, it actually becomes like an action movie that's really, really thrilling. And that's why I responded to it as well as I did. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's talk about some other things that we either liked or didn't like. I guess we could start with, the central casting. How do we feel about Odenkirk here? Can he do the Liam Neeson thing? Can he do the Keanu Reeves thing? How did you guys feel about it?
Yeah, he can definitely do it. And I think what he's different, kind of like what you're talking about. He's different from Keanu Reeves, and where Keanu Reeves, whenever we're talking about John Wick, even in The Matrix too, but he has this ability to, not quite on the same level of James Bond, where he never gets hurt, because John Wick gets hurt. He gets hurt a lot, but it feels like Bob Odenkirk in this role is okay with getting hurt. Like you talked about earlier, he's the brawler, and whenever he gets hurt, he wants you to like, please start something. I dare you to start something. I need this right now. Kind of that Fight Club mentality, like you were saying. And he's different from Liam Neeson in the fact that he can run. So
sure.
Yeah. Sure.
Fair enough.
It is, I should say this about the fighting in this movie, the stylization of the fighting. It's not shaky cam like the Bourne movies where you can't tell what's going on. You can tell what's going on, but it's also not like a big one shot like you would see in John Wick. It's something right in the middle. Like you get some really cool camera, like a fast pans and stuff like that. Yeah. But yeah, I liked it. So it was pretty good. I shouldn't say pretty good. It was good. It was really good. The fighting.
What do you think of Odenkirk, John?
I liked Odenkirk. I think what I like about him is the casting itself is part of the experience of watching the movie, because a lot of people are going to recognize him from Breaking Bad, and they're not going to expect this from him. And that serves the story, because you wouldn't expect this guy who, he's like the put upon. They do this really great editing sequence in the beginning of the movie where you really are just getting like a slapdash montage of how routine his life is. And as this movie keeps going, they peel back a little bit of that, of like, well, why is his life like this? How did he get to this place? And it's just, you wouldn't expect it from this guy. So it's like the surprise of the casting fits so well into the surprise of this guy who actually like maybe has some tricks up his sleeve. And Odenkirk, yeah, he clearly like committed to this role and didn't pull any of his punches in that respect. I do think though, like the few times I've been on Sif Pop, it always seems to be for movies between Incredibles 2 and Soul about like middle-aged men who are feeling unfulfilled. And Aaron's like, all right, what's Negroni up to? Like,
That's right.
Well,
You caught him.
If you're Bob Odenkirk, John, I'm Christopher Lloyd. So just think how that goes.
Does that make me RZA?
Sure, Andrew, you can be RZA. That's fine. I did want to talk about Christopher Lloyd. This is a nice, fun little appearance from Mr. Lloyd. I really enjoy this, and this movie. One of the things it does well, and his character makes me think of this, is it really understands how to play to the audience in a movie like this. You know, it really understands what is fun about this kind of movie, and let's just say the scene that triggers our understanding of the Christopher Lloyd character is really fun, and it's just it totally gets that stuff, and that's another one in the plus column for me. Is I really enjoyed that. Now, did the movie earn its final scene? I'm not sure it earned it, but it still was fun. Does that make sense?
I think so. I know what you're saying, because that's where the Home Alone stuff happens, and I'm like, I don't know. I mean, it's kind of what you're saying, though. It's like it knows its audience kind of wants that, and so it's like, well, here it is. We're making this for you. Don't you like it? And I'm like, I do. Yes, you understand me. You get me.
Yeah, exactly. Any other thoughts that you guys wanted that are on the tip of your tongue?
This is my biggest negative with the movie, is its inability to fully flesh out many aspects of this movie, whether it be world building, whether it be character, not motivations, but character development and how they relate to each other, especially how they relate to each other. There's I'll just say the RZA, Lloyd, Odenkirk trio. It was so kind of just hinted at that I totally forgot about it later on in the movie, and I forgot, like, how do these guys know each other? I don't remember. And then when the credits rolled, I was like, oh yeah, because I was like, there was moments of this movie like, how does this person relate to this person, or how did this person get to this point where they start acting this way towards Odenkirk's character, or stuff like that. There's so many unanswered questions, and it's not the type of unanswered questions like I keep going back to this example, and I don't mean to, but like in John Wick, in the first John Wick movie, there was a lot of seeds planted where you're like, ooh, this could develop into something cool. Whereas in this one, it feels a lot like unfully developed moments that don't really, I could see, if they ever do a sequel to this, I don't see that these being moments that would sprout into something, interesting. Is something that we should have found out in this movie, because they're minimal enough to where they're not part of a greater world building, but they're also integral to our character to a point where, like, you need to know this stuff now before a sequel. Because a lot of it, I was just like, why is this person acting this way towards Odenkirk? Why is this person? And it was just, that was what I considered the biggest mess of this movie. And that's what kept me from leaning into liked it.
I get that. It's definitely disinterested in world building. It's like, it does some very minimal structural, give you the foundation you need to enjoy the show kind of world building, but it's not interested in what might happen beyond what we're seeing in the present right now. This is not a movie that is going to do flashbacks. Like, it's just not interested. It's not interested in flashbacks. It's not interested in relationships necessarily, other than what you see on the screen in the moment. And I think it wants you to make assumptions based on how these characters interact and what's going on. So I can see how you would get there. I definitely think it's intentional. I don't think it's like a mistake, the movie.
Yeah. Oh,
like,
no.
I don't think like they intended to world build more than they did. No, I think it's very intentional what they're giving you on the screen. As to whether or not that impacts your ability to enjoy it, I think that can be different for each person.
And how many different title abbreviation or not abbreviations, but different titles are you going to come up with for an assassin? Like Ben Affleck
Auditor.
was the accountant, you had Chiwetel Ejiofor was the operator or the operative, like how many different versions of that can you come up with before you're like, just say assassin, just say hitman. You don't have to try and come up with a cool, different, intriguing title to get me enticed. It's like, no, assassin. That's all you need.
Yes. Yeah.
That's why I like that it's called Nobody and it's not the auditor, or it's not the custodian. It's not trying to do that.
Oh my god! Oh yeah, the custodian, because he cleans up messes, or something like that. You don't need some fancy halfway dad joke to convince me that this guy is this super awesome killing machine, or come up with the lawnmower, because or the weed eater or something like that. Just say killer or the assassin. It's getting ridiculous.
The cafeteria worker.
Yeah. The bus boy.
I was going to say though, like to your point, Andrew, I do think though that, and to the point that like it's intentional. I do think that they want your imagination fill in the gaps, right? They have this idea that's like, if you just see the reaction of people seeing what they're seeing, then that's going to tell you it's going to be better for the audience because we don't have to come up with some world building explanation that's gonna, and they even make a joke about it in the movie where they're like, every time he's trying to do backstory, like a character just can't, will just like die right in front of him, and like they do that multiple times.
That running gag was really fun.
I liked that a lot.
But okay, this isn't what the example I'm about to give. It doesn't really give away anything to the over theme of the movie. It's
well,
not
can we also just say this is not a like John said, every movie is going to be better if you go in blank and you just kind of let the movie take you. But this is not a movie that you could really spoil that much. You kind of know where this is going. Yeah. So, we're not too worried about that. But go ahead.
That's fair. The example is, why is his wife so distant towards him? Like that whole thing with the pillows on the bed and stuff like that. I'm like, what led to that moment? Because you're acting like it's something important. You keep coming back to it. So tell me why. Why are these two characters like this? It doesn't. There's no resolution or actually any prologue to that moment. Okay. Tell me what am I missing?
I don't want to be too specific because it's another sort of surprise, not a surprise of the movie, but it is something you learn about this guy. But I think the point is that he has been living his life trying to be somebody he's not, and trying to like shut down a certain aspect of him that like brings him some sort of weird fulfillment, and their distance has been that she just doesn't feel connected to the real him, and that he hasn't been able to balance the real him and the part of him that he wants to move on from, because he talks about like, I tried the family life and I tried, like, you could definitely say that like it's kind of hokey in how it does all of that, but I don't know. I thought they covered that.
Well, not only that, the movie in many ways is about them. It ends on basically, I don't know how, I'm talking about the end of the movie, so it technically is spoilers. But if you remember the last line of this movie, it is a moment between them, and a moment where she is aware and into something that we may not have. Like there's a moment where like what they were missing the whole time was just an honest evaluation of each other and their relationship. And so I do think the movie gives enough service to it for it to make sense. However, I do understand what you're saying, Andrew. And again, I do think it's intentional. This movie is just not interested in playing you their wedding video, so to speak. It's just not interested in going back there. It wants you to be able to figure this stuff out by what's happening in the now. And I think it gives you enough.
Release the marriage counseling cut.
Yes. The other thing I did want to say, some really inventive stuff that I hadn't seen before. There's an arson scene that I thought was absolutely gorgeous, and I'd never really visualized anything like that. And this movie has those moments where it's like, that's really fun to look at, and also very clever of you to do something I hadn't seen done like that before. So
not to enjoy those. Not to do a pun, but I'm going to do a pun. The ignition of that arson scene you're talking about is what I was like, oh my gosh, that's beautiful. The way they did that.
I agree.
Yeah, it's like so many of the action scenes are like music videos, honestly.
Yeah, sure.
And I went back and forth a couple times where it was like it almost went into the fantasy land of music videos, and it started to feel like a different kind of movie, and I was like, I don't know about this, but it always won me back because the needle drops. There you go. Fun, I guess. The needle drops were just perfect. Like you felt like they really like searched for the one song that is really going to make this thing come alive and be operatic, but also very striking, like matching the action basically perfectly, in my opinion. It's
not Baby Driver level of choreography mixed with the music,
right?
But I know what you're saying. Yeah. They do definitely like this song for this action scene. What the song is talking about, it goes well with it, but it's not like it's not like a dance, with a car going down the highway, hitting the brake whenever there's a big bass drop or something like that. It's not like that.
Yeah. Any final words? Anything else you want to get out there that we didn't get a chance to talk about in Nobody?
I don't think there was a post-credit scene. I didn't stay. So
I don't think there was.
Yeah, I didn't see one. I'd say if there's a theme to the movies of this week between Nobody and The Father, it's the editing is so important. It just it makes the movie, and I mean that's from last week too with the Snyder Cut. I mean, it's just you can take all that footage and just do such wonders with it when you have an editor and a creative collaboration team that is just firing on all cylinders. And I think this is like the result of that. I definitely think it's the kind of movie that the reason I like it as much as I do is because it has a promise, it delivers, and it fully delivers. And I was like, yes, this is the movie that as I was going, this is what was promised. It gave it to me. It did it well, and I'm thoroughly satisfied with it.
Nice. It is absolutely a recommend for me, especially if you like these, this type of energy, this type of adrenaline kind of movie. I think you'll have a very good time. It was interesting putting together our best ever challenge this week. I kept being reminded of, how fun these kinds of movies are, and in this movie, I think does it very well. So definitely recommend. All right, let's move into the next movie. Let's talk a little bit about The Father. Anthony is 80, mischievous, living defiantly alone and rejecting the careers that his daughter Anne encouragingly introduces. Yet help is also becoming a necessity for Anne. She can't make daily visits anymore, and Anthony's grip on reality is unraveling. The Father stars Anthony Hopkins, Oscar nominated for his performance in this role. Olivia Colman is in there, Imogen Poots, Rufus Sewell in there as well. What did you guys think of this movie? Did you like it, love it, dislike it, hate it, or was it just okay? John, why don't you start the time?
High side of liked it. It's
okay.
Tough. It's one of those things where I got to be really careful with this movie because it is going to have an impact on people. And so I definitely like that, but yeah, this should come with like a content warning or something.
Right? No, I'm totally with you. Andrew?
I am on the high side of loved it.
Oh, good.
Again, I need to preface by saying I am literally coming out of this movie to do this podcast. Like as soon as it ended, I just turned on my camera. And so I just want everybody to know that everything I'm about to say, it's coming from a place of fresh and an emotional wave that I'm still not, down from. So.
Yes, that's why you can see all the discarded Kleenexes around Andrew's area right now.
Is that a cloud above your head, Andrew?
Yeah. You don't joke, man. Don't joke.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I understand. I, however, am not just coming out of this. It's actually been a while since I've seen this. Probably a couple months. And I probably should have refreshed myself, but I decided not to. And I think that'll be good because Andrew's just seen it and I'm kind of remembering back on it. And that actually plays kind of with a lot of the themes of the movies about memory and understanding. But yes, I loved this movie as well. I wouldn't necessarily say high side I loved it, but I loved it. I don't need to feel too much need to qualify that at all. And I think for me, a lot of it comes down to, like John said about editing. I think a lot of it comes down to a high level of difficulty for what this movie is trying to do, and to do it so well is really impressive. This is a movie that aims not. I have never seen an unreliable narrator story like this. Let's just put it that way. I've never seen this type of what do I believe? What do I know? I think in my early review, I said I've never been so confused and so satisfied at the same time, or something like that. It's just such a tightrope, and I feel like this movie really walks it well. So yeah, what are some of your general thoughts, guys?
I'd say unreliable narrator. What about the mother? Since father, mother.
Yes, there you go. Yeah,
that's the movie.
Yeah, it does. It has an exclamation point. So
yeah.
I'll
say this about the movie. It does deal with Alzheimer's and memory loss and stuff like that. So if you know anybody who has dealt with those issues, especially Alzheimer's, because I think that's the biggest one, it's a way of looking into what the world is like from their point of view, and it is horrifying. It is so terrifying.
Oh.
Yeah. And a lot of this comes down to, I have to say this, Anthony Hopkins, yes, he is famous for Hannibal Lecter, and he will always be known as like that. That will be the role that defines him. But I think if you look towards the latter end of his career, this will be the movie that he will be remembered for the latter part of his career, because this performance, if he's not doing what he's doing in this movie doesn't land as emotional and as traumatic as it is, because he is
totally agree.
Delivering a performance here.
Yeah, no, I totally agree.
It's his epitaph, I think is the term.
Yeah,
potentially, because I remember he in the Westworld. I was hoping that wasn't going to be the final like big performance from him. He's of course done other things, but I just remember that being a good performance. But I was like, there's nothing about this that just really feels like only he could do it. But the father, I can't imagine anybody else.
It's great
in the role. Yeah.
I think this is 2 years in a row he's been nominated for an Oscar. Wasn't Two Popes last year, or was that 2 years ago?
That was 2019, so yeah.
Yeah, that would have been last year. Yeah, that would have been last year's award season.
This whole Oscars year has got me confused of when things were.
Yeah, no, I totally get it.
Yeah. I need to say this too.
But
I've never talked about this publicly. But you all know how I've dealt with, my anxiety and stuff like that throughout the years. Well, this new regiment that I'm on, one of the major side effects of it is memory loss. And I have been dealing with that. Like, I'll go to the grocery store, park my car, and as soon as I get out of the car, I forget why I'm there. And I have to get back in my car and sit down for like 15 minutes to try and remember why I was there. So that has been very difficult, and I think it helped me empathize with Anthony Hopkins' character, Anthony, in this movie. So that might be why it hit me a lot harder. And again, like I said, I'm coming out of this fresh. So
absolutely. No, I we've all experienced that in one way or another, and this movie is traumatic and moving by itself, let alone to either in your situation, Andrew, where you're dealing with memory loss, or in somebody's situation who is dealing with a loved one who is going through this. Like, John's not wrong when he says, this should come with a whole bunch of trauma warnings, because it is definitely one that is going to make you experience something that is not pleasant to experience.
Is this a horror movie?
Yeah,
it is. And I was even thinking, we just had The Relic, right?
Yeah.
Which deals in a lot of these same themes in a much different way. It's much more ostensibly a horror movie.
Metaphorical to the supernatural extent,
Right. Yes. Whereas this is so much more authentic, and in being so, almost feels more scary. It is scarier than the actual horror movie that did the same thing in some ways. Although that movie is more from the perspective of being the loved one who's experienced. This is more from the perspective of being the one who's experiencing it.
Yeah.
So yeah, what an interesting double feature The Relic and The Father would make. So
you can also say too that it's like trying to mention how this can be inherited generation after generation, which you could theoretically put a criticism to it's too much, about the audience surrogate instead of the person who's going through this. And in this movie, this is like the definition of when Roger Ebert talked about movies creating empathy. Like this is that movie. This like really helps you understand. The timing of me watching this movie it's one of those things where I'm like, the use is trying to attack me or something, because like literally I watched this movie right after I got off the phone with my mom. I'm talking to her for about like an hour, and like my grandfather's going through this, and like my mom is telling me how just horrified she is, like dealing with like he doesn't remember where he is, he can't like hang on to things and like very specific things. And then I watched this movie right after, and I was just like looking up at the sky, like,
right? Like,
why? I don't need. But no, it's. I want to mention too, Florian Zeller, who directs this, and I've never watched this is based on his play, and like the criticism people tend to say is like this feels too much like a play. I kind of was feeling that a little bit with Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, where I was kind of like, I wonder how this would really potentially be better if I was watching it as staged, but I didn't feel that at all with this. I feel like this has like a film quality to it, very specific film quality. Not that that's better or worse compared to the stage play or anything like that whole thing, but I just love the original nature of this idea and how it can translate to a lot of different stories. And that idea being you can recast people can come in and out of the story, and you kind of pick up as time goes like why there's a confusion, and then characters coming back and forth and keeping track of the narrative. That to me is like such an original and interesting way to handle this subject that I found a lot better than other movies that are way more straightforward and therefore can be more exhausting.
Yeah. I've never experienced that empathy that you're talking about in this particular kind of instance. I've had grandparents go through this. My mom's side of the family lives very long lives. And when you live very long lives, dementia is one of those issues that you will likely deal with. Both my great-grandmother, I've seen both my great-grandmother and my grandmother go through this. And so, there is part of me also that, wonders how many years before I'm going through this with my mom or, somebody else. And it's not fun to think about. It's terrifying to think about. And I've never experienced a movie that so much put me in the headspace of somebody going through this and was able to just think, my trauma in having a loved one go through this, how that must pale to the person who actually is going through it. And I was absolutely floored with experiencing that. And I think that is ultimately the movie's biggest success, is that it portrays that in a way that allows you the space to consider someone else's pain. And yeah, I've never seen that in a movie in such a straightforward and clear way. So yeah, definitely. What other thoughts? Any other thoughts about this that you guys want to talk about?
John brought it up, and I know we talked about it, but I have to go back to the structure of this movie because it's confusing. Obviously, it's meant to be confusing, but it also is told in a way with repetition, I guess you could say, as a thematic element, to where it helps you ground where you are within this story. So you're confused, but at the same time, you feel a sense of, okay, so that's when this is going to be taking place, or that's when this will be happening in the future, potentially, So it's enough for the audience to feel like we have some grasp on this nightmarish sequence that we're watching, but at the same time, it doesn't do it in a way to where you don't feel like you can empathize with Anthony.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
That's how I think memory works too. The way that you hold on to like certain things or certain reactions to statements to try to like anchor yourself, right? There are like little moments where he's trying to like center himself because he knows he's not stupid. He knows that he's going through something that's challenging. He knows that it's difficult for other people, and he's just trying to make sense of it himself. And you can see those moments where he even like tries to put it away, it's like, oh yeah, of course, but because he knows it's easier to do that. And to everybody's point, a lot of these movies we've seen, like Still Alice and Supernova, and they all tackle these subjects in their own different ways. And I think what those movies tend to do for me is they make me think about kind of like what you were saying, Aaron. It's like, this is what I'll, maybe someday go through with my parents. This is the first time I've ever watched one of these movies where I thought of what would it be like if I went through this someday.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I've never had that experience. I've never even gone that far to be so in the shoes of the person that I'm like, I can't imagine going through what he's going through right now. And I'm just turned my cam off to go grab a box of tissues real quick. Yeah.
Well, I also just saw that my mom is actually watching the show today, and she just popped up with a comment that says, "Yep, valid reason for wondering about when we'll be dealing this up close, impersonal." And it's a real thing, and it's just this stuff is all part of humanity and life, and I mean today. As we're talking about, this doesn't have anything to do specifically with the topic other than just kind of life and death and issues. But today is the 3rd anniversary of the day that I died. So there's all these touch points in our lives where, we go through something we didn't think we'd ever have to go through. And I think it's good to process these things. I really do. And I love a movie like this for allowing us a better, look at actually feeling something, processing something, and preparing our psychology for the empathy that you talked about and that Ebert always talked about with movies. So yeah.
I hope that the people don't look at it though and it's like, oh, is this an Eat Your Vegetables movie? I gotta watch it. It's not like that. It's also just entertaining and really, really great to watch.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'm glad you said that. I'm glad you said that. Chicken. Fair enough. No, I'm really glad you said that, John, because I do think I'm susceptible to it too, where I put off watching a movie because I'm going to feel stuff in this movie. And this is a movie that's going to just squeeze me like a washcloth. And it's not that. It really is just the ability to have empathy and experience. And like you said, there is an entertainment element to it as well. It's, it takes you along because you love these characters and you're enjoying there's some stuff with dancing in this movie that is just really fun and really, joyful. And so, yes, I'm really glad you said that. This isn't an Eat Your Vegetable movies. This is a movie, a well-rounded meal that contains vegetables. So yeah, definitely. There you go. I think that's a good place to leave The Father. That is available on pay video on demand. You can rent The Father, and I don't think I mentioned Nobody is only available in theaters, I believe. I don't believe that's available to stream yet.
I think that's right. And drive-in theaters. It's playing near here.
Oh, nice.
I was going to ask real quick, though, in terms of like Oscars and stuff, do you two think that this has like a decent chance? Because Anthony Hopkins is Best Picture.
I don't think so.
He's going against Chadwick Boseman, isn't he?
Yeah.
Right.
So,
yeah.
He won't win.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that for a posthumous reason or anything like that. I do think that Chadwick Boseman probably gave the best performance, but man, Anthony is right there. I think with Ma Rainey, you have a character who's killing his performance. He is doing such a perfect job. Whereas with The Father, the movie surrounds Anthony Hopkins' performance really. So it feels more integral and important to the story, whereas Ma Rainey he is pegged as a leading character, but I could also see him getting a supporting role nomination for that, so
these conversations are always interesting to me. It really brings home to me that I think what I love about award season, I love award season. I love the ability to float before people stuff they may not have seen otherwise, right? Like the nominations process is my favorite process of award season. Just being like, this group of amazing actors deserves your attention. This group of amazing movies deserves your attention. When it gets down to, is Anthony Hopkins' performance better than Chadwick Boseman's performance? I start to go a little cross-eyed and just be like, we are talking about really subjective stuff here. You know what I mean? Like, how do you?
Well, that's what award season is. It's subjectivity. That's all it is. There's no
It's politics.
There's no objective way to look at it.
Right, totally. So yeah, and I think that's the element I'll hear from other people about, like, award season is dumb and stupid because why are we, comparing art? This is the point where I get that, where it's like, but again, I love everything about it. I love the discussions. I love ranking stuff. I love all that kind of stuff. But yes, the idea of comparing what Anthony Hopkins is doing here with what Chadwick Boseman is doing in Ma Rainey's is just watch both movies because they're both amazing in them. So yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think it stands a shot though for film editing and adapted screenplay? I could see it winning either of those.
Possibly. Which is
Coleman, maybe
the favorite in adapted screenplay? Is that the one that Promising Young Woman? Is that adapted screenplay or is that original? I think Promising Young Woman's going to win
I thought it was adapted, but I could be wrong about that.
I think Promising Young Woman's going to win a screenplay Oscar. I really do. I'm not sure about the other one. I forget how they divide those. Sometimes doesn't make sense to me.
We'll find out.
But we will find out. All right, let's move on to the best ever challenge. But before we do, a huge thank you to our amazing SIF Pop members. We love you. We appreciate you. If you would like to be a member of SIF Pop and kind of find out what that's all about and all the fun stuff and the perks, just check it out at Patreon, patreon.com/SiftPop. It starts at $3 a month. And one of the big perks that we've been talking about recently is the fact that those podcasts are ad-free in your podcast feed when you are a SIF Pop member. So if you've been hearing some ads pop up in the middle of your SIF Pop experience, that is another way we support what goes on here. But if you are a member, then those disappear. So you can check that out at patreon.com/SiftPop. And thank you to everyone who is a member and to all those who are going to check it out. Appreciate you guys. All right, let's move on to the best ever challenge. And we are doing best ever one-person army movies. So these are movies where one character takes on the world, basically. Now, this is a nebulous category. You can kind of squeeze some different kinds of movies into it. We each probably have our own kind of idea of what counts and what doesn't. And we can talk about that a little bit before we get into it. I would say one type of movie I discounted were more like the one-person survival movies, like Castaway or The Martian or Gravity. Like, you could kind of see those as like one-person army movies, but it's really more about survival than like battling a bunch of people. So that was kind of one line I drew. How did you guys find the experience of thinking about what this type of movie is?
I went for something that was kind of not tonally, but an element of it is multiple people at the same time fighting, as opposed to I'm going to fight one guy in this room, and then when I go into the next room, I'm going to fight another guy. I wanted it to be insurmountable odds whenever, you were thinking about this. So I could come up with examples that would definitely fit this category that would like be in like my top 5 movies of all time, where I would be like, oh yeah, obviously right here, it's somebody taking on the world by themselves. But I went with something a little different than what I would normally do.
Yeah. There's a nebulous too. How did you find it, John? Kind of putting this together.
I tried to quantify it by how insurmountable the odds are. Because if they're like a one-person army, that means like the chances of them winning should feel extremely, extremely small. So I rooted out things like, I wanted to say Army of Darkness, but I was like, yeah, but do you ever really feel like that movie is so campy that it's too much in one direction? I also left out some obvious ones too, because I was like, I don't know. I was trying to like pick ones that are a little bit more specific to me as well. Although I'm kicking myself because you said it's like we can stretch this. Like I could have done Fievel Goes West. Oh well. Yeah, but I certainly could have. I picked favorites. I picked ones that I was like, obviously there are other versions of these that are way more prototypical, way more that movie, everybody loves that movie, but I had to be me.
I gotta be me. All right, let's get into it. We will go number 5 to number 1, and we are using Trump rules. So if you have something a little bit higher, you can yell out Trump, and we'll talk about it then. You can even just say it. You don't even have to yell it. You can just say it.
You guys gave me a hard time last week for yelling out Trump, so.
That's true. Let's see. I'll kick us off. And with my number 5, which is History of Violence. I think this is a phenomenal movie, and it doesn't often come up. It's not one of those like that kind of has that status where people are always talking, "Hey, have you seen this movie?" Kind of thing. And very, very similar to Nobody in a lot of ways. But man, there's a real authenticity to what's going on here, and I think it is very violent. So just be aware of that. But it is absolutely one of those. Okay, this guy's going to go kick all the butt, and you're going to enjoy it. So yeah, History of Violence is my number 5.
Yep, I remember the first time I saw it, I didn't like it, but I went back to it and watched. I don't know why. I just didn't connect with the character. But the second time I watched it, I'm like, okay, yeah, there's something here. It's because it's like Eastern Promises, which is the same director, I think. It's just a. Did Cronenberg do Eastern Promises?
I don't recall. So that's why I'm kind of confused. But maybe.
Anywho, whoever directed it, I understand that it was a style, like their directing style, and I was able to, appreciate it more the second time around, I guess. Or maybe it's just whenever you watch a movie a second time, you pick up on things that you didn't the first time. So regardless, I like the movie.
David Cronenberg directed both movies.
That blows my mind, actually.
Yeah. Okay. I've always wanted to read the graphic novel for this one, just to kind of see that, like, the changes and how different they are, because they do seem like a totally like different kind of take on the material. So
yeah. Andrew, what do you got at number 5?
Number 5, I am going to go with First Blood, Rambo.
That was in my honorable mentions.
Yeah, out of all the Rambo movies, I think any of them obviously would apply here, But I think that First Blood is the one where I'm like, yeah, it's the best out of all of them. I think you can make an argument that the Rambo 2 is the one where he is really, just this unstoppable tornado of death, But I think that. Because in First Blood, he doesn't, in the movie anyway, I gotta say this, in the movie, he doesn't technically kill anybody. In the book, in First Blood, the book, he kills that entire town. I'm not even joking. There wasn't even a sequel to the book because he dies in the book. He dies at the end of the book, but in the movie, he is just trying to survive, but you can see that he has an empathy to where he doesn't want to kill anybody, but he could. And he makes that clear throughout this entire movie, where he's like pinning the sheriff. I forget, man, I love this movie so much, and I should know the characters' names. But when he pins the sheriff up against the tree, and he has his Rambo knife up to his neck, and he goes, "I could have killed all of you, and I wouldn't have even had to try," and you believe him because you realize that because of this topic, he is an army of one. He could do things that nobody else in that town could do.
Yeah.
John,
what do you got at number 5?
For me, this is one that really is really specific to my cinematic upbringing, because this is like one of the first times I got to see a new Army of One movie without any sort of legacy behind it in the theater with everybody else, and that was Taken, the 2008 film.
It's a good one.
I'm just saying, I understand, like, it's not aged super well because the sequels kind of took the franchise in a direction that is extremely unfortunate. But man, that first Taken is just so satisfying. And it's so iconic. The dialogue, it has so many like scenes and pieces of dialogue that really just get across how unstoppable this guy is. But it speaks to what I was saying earlier. Like, it felt to me like the odds were so against this guy. Not only does he have to like war off against a bunch of people, he doesn't even know who they are. He doesn't know. He has to like use clues. He has to try to make shaky alliances. He has to use all of these skills that he's collected over a period of years in order to to make this happen. And you buy the motivation, the drive. It's such an efficient movie in setting up why he is going to such extreme lengths. It's not just that it was his daughter, but like the fact that she's also estranged, the fact that he feels like he has something to prove. I was thinking about this movie a lot while watching Nobody, right? Where it's like he kind of is in that same sort of situation where everybody just sort of like looks at him as like, man, you can't do anything, you know? Like I would have stuck up for this person if, you know, if I was in your shoes. But this movie proves that like, no, he's showing mercy on all of you. And yeah, once he gets going, nothing can stop him. So yeah, I love that it combines the action with also like the intrigue as well. Like that's why it just, that first time I saw it in the theater, nothing like it.
It's definitely in my honorable mentions, for sure. Worth talking about. I will
find you, and I will get back that kitty cat bracelet. No, honestly, John, I'm right there with you. This, the first time I saw Taken in the theater, I was blown away. It's so good. That first one is good. The sequels are trash, but I think people forget how good that first one is. It's so good.
It is. It really is. Yeah. We can move on to our number 4s. My number 4, it's a bit of a stretch, but I think it works, is Gladiator. I have it number 4.
I thought about putting it in here.
I think it works. I really do think, you know, you have a lot of the similar tropes that come with an army of one, whereas lose something and then, you know, it's vengeance fighting your way through to the end and through greater and greater odds. I do think it works. Now, this movie is a little more epic than the typical Army of One movie. It's definitely doing more than just that. But I do think this movie is pretty incredible and wanted to mention it in this genre. So yeah, Gladiator is my number 4.
Good call.
What do you got, Andrew?
My number 4 is Skyfall. I had to put a James Bond one in here, and I think that Skyfall was the one to go with. This might be, besides Goldfinger, what I consider the best James Bond movie. But I think this is a better movie than Goldfinger. I just think that old Sean Connery movie really captured the essence of what those old classic Bond movies were like. You know, they were ridiculous. You know, you had this suave, unscratchable guy, you know, whereas in Skyfall you have somebody, I think Phil even talked about it in the chat earlier, how the Daniel Craig Bonds, they're not afraid to show him get hurt, and he carries those scars throughout the entire movie, and that's something that you actually like to see. And whenever you're considering an Army of One movie, because showing that they are vulnerable adds to the intensity that you feel like, oh, they may not make it out of this okay. Like, I think Skyfall was like the closest I came to that going, wait, is James Bond going to be okay at the end of this one? I think that's the closest I ever came to that thought. And I just have to say, Javier Bardem nailed it. He might be one of the best Bond villains of all time.
Skyfall's good. I enjoy Skyfall. I don't know. I would consider Bond an Army of One, though. I mean, he works for MI6, right? Like,
yeah, but he's not out there with gadgets
squad. And
it's just, you could say the same thing about Maximus from Gladiator. It's not just him, and it's not just him in the Colosseum. He has all the other gladiators there with him. So
yeah,
I won't use my veto. I won't use my veto.
I'd say Skyfall too, like and I was thinking about this too, and I was trying to decide if I was going to pick Bond, it was between this and Casino Royale. And I think I went with this as an honorable mention because like this one does actually isolate him in a very specific way.
Great point. Yeah,
especially
you're
toward
right.
the end. So I definitely approve.
Yeah, I think it works. What do you got, John, for your number 4?
Oh boy, I'm going with Kill Bill. If I have to pick one, I'm going to say Volume 1 because obviously the Crazy 88 sequence really epitomizes what we're talking about.
Yeah.
I think why I wanted to choose this one because there's so many of these movies, but I think what makes this one, first of all, I think I was trying to like look at like a different type of hero or anti-hero or even villain, if you want to say that can fit the bill for this as well. It's funny you mentioned Javier Bardem, because I was thinking maybe Anton Sugar from No Country for Old Men,
and that's the one I was thinking about putting on this list. Like that would have been my number one, but I'm like, I don't see him really fighting a bunch of people at once.
Right. Yeah, he still feels like a one-man army, but he doesn't go against it. But anyway, here, this definitely has like both aspects of it, where it is a bit episodic. It is a bit like this villain, this villain, this villain. But I think what epitomizes for me just how unique this one is the action itself being so stylized, and like she does get hurt. She does have like a vulnerability to her. It's a movie that really understands what makes her such a, I don't want to say empathetic character. I guess that's true. Maybe sympathetic. It's like a combination of like emotional attachments you have to her. You want her to succeed. You also want her to get bloody revenge, and all of that kind of like rolled into one. And also, I wanted to pick something that had a really good variety of weaponry and action. I did consider, and maybe I shouldn't mention it yet, there's another movie that does the same sort of thing. I don't know if anybody picked it though, and it was between this and that, and so maybe I'll mention it later. And I had to go with The Bride, because like what other movie really justifies the like revenge the way this one does? And that Crazy 88 sequence will forever just be one of the all-time great action scenes in movie history.
I love the fact that producer Phil in the chat saw it on my face when you said it doesn't fit the bill, and I was just so ready to be like, "Do you know the amazing pun you just made?" But I decided to hold back, keep it in. All right, we're on to our number threes, right?
Yep.
My number three is, I went back and forth as to whether or not this counts, and decided it does, even though there isn't a large variety of people this one-man army has to beat. It's really just one person, but it is a lot of experiences, and I went with The Revenant at number three. So this is one that I feel like was talked about a lot when it came out, and then just kind of has, Leo got his Oscar and everybody's, fine with it, and we're just kind of moving on. But man, this movie owns me. And I think a lot of the reason this movie owns me has to do with the same way that a lot of these movies we're talking about maintain their momentum and what they're doing. And it's just thing after thing after thing that this man has to conquer. Now, the reason I wasn't sure whether I was going to include it is because there are elements of it that are very much like that survival kind of one-man army that I was talking about. But there is also the element of he really is trying to find revenge for something very near and dear to him, and eventually does have to, fight that out in what is an incredible finale of this movie. So really dig this one. And honestly, if it's a chance just to talk more about The Revenant, I will throw it out there.
We should have a conversation about Revenant one day, because I do not like the movie, but I want to hear more about what you like about it. It's interesting.
Yeah. This one has stuck with me in a lot of ways. Yeah, we should definitely have that conversation sometime. Andrew, what do you got into your number three?
Judgment Day.
Mm-hmm.
Especially towards again, it unlike I don't know why I keep doing this. I did it with First Blood, and I'm doing it here. In the first Terminator movie, he kills everybody. He kills everybody. T2, he doesn't kill everybody, but that doesn't mean he's not a one-man army. That fight scene at the end when he has the minigun and he's out the window and he's just mowing down cop cars and stuff like that. Or whenever he's walking through the lobby and he's getting shot up, and then he just, starts kneecapping all those SWAT guys. It's I don't know if it counts because he's not technically a man. He's a machine. but
is he a person? Because that's what we went with. We went with one person. That's the point of the movie.
Oh yeah, he's a person for sure, because he made me cry at the end of that whenever they lowered him down into the pit. So yeah.
Very nice.
Good job, Arnold. I had to put, if you don't put one Arnold movie on your list of one-man armies, then I think that you need to really reevaluate your list. Because he is like the king, him or Sylvester Stallone, they're the kings of, the one-man army movies.
Yeah.
I do have one for him in my honorable mentions.
What do you got at number 3, John?
I have another Luc Besson connected thing because I mentioned Taken before. It wasn't directed by Luc Besson, but he did produce that film. And part of that is because it's technically of a piece with Leon the Professional. Had to go with this one.
Sure. I love Leon so much.
So, I didn't see this when it came out. I was like 5 years old or something, but I did see this growing up a lot. I was so in love with this movie. I think the first time I watched it, the reason was because I was such a fan of Natalie Portman because of the Star Wars movies, right? And I was, curious about her filmography. And kind of looking at this early performance from her, and also just Jean Reno and Gary Oldman, who are two formative actors for me, kind of in a movie that just like understands the best things about them. Earlier, Andrew, when you were saying, we were kind of clowning a little bit about the whole like alternative names for hitmen. I will say it works here, because I think you referenced
the Professional,
the Cleaner.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, because I think he's called a cleaner.
Oh, the Cleaner. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
The Custodian or whatever.
Yeah.
I think though this movie gets away with it for sure because it's it's a classic and it's been around for quite a while, but it's so rewarding. The everyone line.
Everyone.
Really, absolutely perfect. And I haven't revisited the film in a while. Like it's been a few years, but yeah, when we were like talking about this and I was thinking about it, I got super pumped to rewatch because it's just the final like 20-30 minutes of this movie will always stick with me. Always.
Yeah.
I'm not going to lie. If I would have thought of it, I would have put it on this list. I think it's because whenever I think of Leon the Professional, don't get me wrong, that last 20-30 minutes is astounding. It's incredible. But whenever I'm thinking about this movie, it's always the relationship between Jean Reno's character and Matilda, Natalie Portman. Right. That's what I think of when I think of this movie. But you are 100% correct. This is a one-man army movie, and it probably should have made my top 5.
Very nice. On to our number 2s. For my number 2, Andrew, I'm going to talk about one of your favorite movies of all time. So if you don't have it on the list, it's just because you didn't think of it as a one-person army movie, which I can understand.
Yeah.
I'm going with Hot Fuzz at number 2.
Yeah.
I think this works. There's just that element of like the whole town is against him, and he's kind of like it gives Simon Pegg the chance to play this kind of character, right? That just always has the answer, always knows what to do, and is in that situation. But it is also a comedy, which I love. Yeah. That's kind of an element we're not seeing in a lot of these movies, other than Army of Darkness, I think was mentioned as a possibility, would have, a lot of that comedy or cheese in it as well. But yeah, I know you love this one, Andrew, for good reason. It's one of my favorite movies as well. And I decided to stick it in the category. So there you go.
You're totally right, because Nicholas Angel, Simon Pegg's character, could technically be a one-man army. He could do it all himself, and I'm nitpicking here. I'm not trying to dissuade you, but he has Nick Frost. He has, the rest of...
but does he?
See, that's the thing. That's what I'm saying. Like, yeah, they're there, so it's technically not a one-man army, but he could do it all himself.
Right.
You're 100%, and I am not invalidating this pick at all.
Yeah.
Great choice.
I love it too.
What's your number 2, Andrew?
I don't think that people would really consider this movie a one-man army movie because it's more about the political aspect of it, but there's a lot of killing in this movie. I'm going to go with V for Vendetta. Because I think there are plenty of scenes where V is taking on huge amounts of people by himself. I think of the fight in the TV studio with all the cops, and then there's the scene underground in the railway system, one of the final scenes of the movie, which I'm going to say right now is one of the coolest fight scenes ever. The My Turn with the knives and stuff. I'm going to kill you all before you reload. I love this movie so much. It is in my top, I think it's in like my top 20 movies of all time. It's nice. It makes me cry every time I watch it. I think V is an amazing character. It's a character who you know the minimal amount that you need to know about this character, yet still you empathize and you care about him so much.
Very nice.
So,
Good choice.
I was not expecting Natalie Portman to be all over this.
Hey,
man,
that's
she
right.
is.
Why not? Why not?
I wasn't expecting no Trumps so far going into this.
So we may go with 15 different answers here, depending. What do you got at number 2?
I don't know. This could break it. We'll see. So I'm gonna say it's the obvious one. It's the one they've been waiting for. Like, of course, Die Hard. But
It was my honorable mention. It was my first honorable mention.
My honorable mention as well. So
hey,
yeah,
there we go. Okay, at least one person. Look, I just rewatched this movie, and what can I even say? It hasn't been. Is there anything left that nobody's brought up before?
No.
Like,
did you know he's barefoot in this movie? Did you know that happens?
Did you know he's barefoot?
Did you know what happens during Christmas? I totally am the first person to bring
What?
it up.
Hans Gruber.
No, it's one of the greatest action films, and I will point out that not only are the odds against him in terms of having to overcome this terrorist group, but he also has to rise against the main villain, Hans Gruber, Alan Rickman, who is just as larger than life as he is, and they make such a point to say that is the real battle between these two men, and so it's something. I'll bring up Nobody. It's something that movie doesn't get. That movie does not deliver on that front. The villain is nowhere near as memorable. But here,
we didn't even talk about that when we did our Nobody review. You're 100%
so
right.
forgettable. We didn't even talk about it in the review.
Yeah,
exactly. So,
but he sings. He karaoke's. Anyway.
Yeah. Okay, that's a lot of flavor and color you added to the movie, I guess. But no, Die Hard. It's the quintessential action movie, and also one of the best one-man army movies.
Agreed. My obvious pick for number 1 is The Matrix. I think this movie is, what haven't we said about it? But Neo is the ultimate one-person army in my mind. So yeah, I went with The Matrix as my number 1.
Mentions for me.
Yeah,
I didn't even think about it because I hate. I've said this with almost every single movie you brought up, Aaron. I don't think it's a one-man army movie because you got Morpheus, you got Trinity, you got all the supporting, people. But yeah, he's
literally the one, Andrew.
That's right. This is literally his name.
But that's not until The Matrix Reloaded and then Revolutions, whenever he's all by himself. And those movies we don't need to talk about. But no, I have no qualms with you putting The Matrix on this list at all.
What do you got at number 1?
I am going to go with, I think that this is the epitome of a one-man army in the movie aspect. In the comic series, he's not a one-man army, but let's go with The Dark Knight. I think Batman is, because he is all about enduring by himself, that he is taking this burden on alone. He has people help him like Lucius and Gordon and Alfred, but they're not there. It's just him. I guess Gordon is a couple times, but really this is a movie about one man trying to endure the entire pain of a city and the fear of a city as this madman tries to burn everything to the ground. So I don't know what, kind of like with Die Hard, I don't know what hasn't been said about The Dark Knight, that people consider Heath Ledger the greatest Joker of all time. Good for them. It's what it is. It's great. One of the greatest movies of all time. Top 10.
This is why I started with the category, with how subjective and interesting this category is. I would have never thought of Batman as a one-person army. But I totally get it. I get what you're saying. Yeah. I get why you put it in there in the same way that you get why I put mine in there. Like, it's such an interesting category for that kind of stuff. John, what did you have at number 1?
Okay, and we did it. We didn't have any overlap. It's fantastic.
Nice. I love it.
I'm gonna go with my favorite Western of all time, and one of my all-time favorite movies too. I would say for sure. Obviously, in this conversation where I brought up such great movies, but I'm gonna go with High Noon. Yeah. Oh man, this movie, just the absolute, like this is the one that if I have to like go back in time and be like, what is the movie that really fully brings this idea, because it's not the first movie to do this, right? The one-man army thing.
Oh,
but for me, it's like the first one that like sets the stakes the way that it does, and it just gets like these characters into a place where you feel like any moment this guy's just not going to win. The odds are way too stacked against him. It's not Magnificent Seven. It's not even Seven Samurai. It's not this whole like, we got to help everybody. We got to get the whole gang together. Everybody ditches this guy, and he's just on his own, and he has to, you know, find some conceivable way. There's nothing special about him. There's nothing. He's, you know, everyone around him, you know, Amy is a pacifist and trying to convince him not to do any of this, but he's like, I got to do it. It's my duty. I got to look out for these people. And that's why I picked this over something like the Dirty Harry movies, because as much as I like those movies, I don't know, they don't have that same emotional undercurrent of the guy who's doing reluctantly, and you feel like good reason that he's doing this reluctantly. He's probably going to lose everything in this fight. So yeah, love High Noon. I got to see it in theater once. It was like a classic thing, and it's such a big screen movie in every way.
Nice. It's on my list of shame. I'm planning on watching it soon. So, but I haven't seen it.
There's another Western on your list of shame you need to watch first, but okay.
Thanks. I am very light on the Westerns. This is true. This is true.
Yeah.
You mentioned Dirty Harry. I definitely had that in honorable mentions as one that definitely needed mentioned in this category.
I got a lot of honorable mentions, but I only have 5 that I'm going to talk about because, like you said, the spectrum of this, you could list every movie ever made.
Yeah. Yeah. I think one thing I need to say right off the bat is I'm surprised none of us had a Denzel movie in our top 5. You know, he kind of has that energy about him. Man on Fire is probably the one I would choose.
That was literally what I was just about to. That was my first.
That's in my honorable mentions. Yeah.
Man on Fire.
Also thought
also throw Iron Man, the first Iron Man movie.
Okay.
Because whenever he's taking on that entire, I guess they're not Taliban. Whatever they are, the 10 rings, whenever he's in the Middle East. John Wick, we have to, we've been talking about him so much that John Wick. And then the Raid movies. I think the Raid movies where Ico is just this unstoppable, and he's getting hurt a lot more in the second movie. He's getting the crap kicked out of him as opposed to the first movie. But the Raid movies are some of the best fighting movies of all time.
Yeah. John, what did you have in your honorable mention? Any others that you wanted to throw out there?
Actually, I think we might have covered them all because I had Matrix, I had Men on Fire, Book of Eli, the other Denzel one I was thinking about.
Yeah,
and
true.
I had John Wick for sure. I think that's basically everything. I didn't pick a ton.
I think I wanted to mention the Bourne movies. I mean, you could certainly kind of see Bourne as, a one-person army. Bourne Ultimatum is probably my favorite Bourne movie, so I'd probably pick that one.
Easily.
Pitch Black, I think, falls in this category.
Oh, yeah, I was thinking about
Riddick
the second
is definitely a one-man army.
Yeah. Enter the Dragon, I think, is worth mentioning here. Alien could be seen that way.
Ripley is definitely a one-person army.
I mentioned Home Alone earlier. I think is a really fun insert into this category. And then I enjoyed Jack Reacher, and I think the first Jack Reacher kind of has this feel to it as well.
The first one was good, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it was. And then Atomic Blonde is another one I really, really love that feels like this too. So I wanted to throw that out there as well. So
I wonder if I could put Mad Max Fury Road in this, not for Mad Max, more Furiosa.
Right.
I think that she would kind of qualify.
Well, the original Mad Max would definitely qualify, I think.
Oh, yes, Thunderdome, for sure. But I'm talking about great movies.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. You. I think there's a nostalgia element to the original Mad Max with Mel Gibson that you kind of love, but I think that from a stylistic and actual perspective standpoint, Fury Road is leagues beyond whatever, or I should say miles. It's if you could put however much guzzling you could put beyond, better than those original ones.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to the buried treasure. What's that one thing in any area of pop culture that you want to make sure people know about? Andrew, you're going to start us off.
Am I? Okay.
You are. What do you got?
I got a Vigima game for everybody on the PC. Content warning, it is very violent and gory, so if that's not up your alley, then don't play it. Same with a first-person shooter. The game is called Hunt Showdown.
Okay.
I think I said Hut. It should have been Hunt. Yeah. Pretty much what the game is you hunt monsters. You're in a party of 3. It's a online game, so you're playing with multiple people, and you're split into squads of 3. So everybody's trying to kill the monster, like the big bad monster for the level, and then once the monster's dead, you got to make sure you kill the other team. So there's a PvP as well as a PvE element to the game that is really fun. Again, it's very gory. There are zombies. There are like grotesque, like Cronenberg monsters. I know we talked about Cronenberg earlier. It's a whole bunch of Cronenberg world monsters that you have to take out. And it's like a Western horror sci-fi game. It's fun.
Nice. Hunt Showdown. Is it exclusive to any particular platform? Is it just PC, or can you also get it elsewhere?
You can I know you can get it on Xbox. I think you can get it on PlayStation, but I'm playing it right now off of Steam. So
okay, fair enough.
Yep.
My buried treasure is a show that just started on Disney Plus. That's not Marvel. I checked out the first episode of Mighty Ducks Game Changers and was not expecting a lot out of it, and got just a little bit more than not a lot out of it. This isn't a great show, but I had some real fun with this, and I don't think it was all nostalgia. I really don't. I think a good portion of it probably is for me. I did enjoy those original movies. But I think there is what I'm loving about it. It is so very crystal clear about the joy that has been taken out of youth sports because of how in depth and professionalized they've become, and the fact that it's, practice every night on weekends, camps all summer long. It's not about love of the game. It's about, excelling and getting into, a good college and playing pro and all that stuff, as opposed to just playing for the fun of the game. And even in just one episode, the show really hits that message really well. And, Gordon Bombay is back, and he's fun. He has a couple really great funny lines in this first episode. I like the characters. I like the kids. And I think that's important in a movie like this. Like I'm really enjoying them. So you're not getting like super polished, top-notch stuff here, but what you are getting is, I think, good content. So I guess, take that for what it's worth, but I had a really good time with it. And it's just one episode. So
is Emilio so far the only recurring character, or is like the original kid grown up?
I think so. However, there may have been a coach of another team that was from the original movies, but I
know who you're talking about. No, that guy's from Letterkenny. The show Letterkenny.
Okay, so I wasn't 100% sure, but yes, I'm enjoying it. And I forget I should have looked it up, the cast up, but the main mom in the movie, I really like her. She's also in
the Gilmore Girls, Lauren. What's her name? Conrad, Lauren.
Yeah, I think you're right. Most recently, I've seen her in Zoe's Extraordinary Playlist as well, and she's really good here.
Lauren Graham.
Yes, that's right. Lauren Graham. So yeah, anyhow, Mighty Ducks Game Changers. Check it out. You might like it.
I might check it out. I like this whole like Cobra Kai thing people are trying to do with this stuff.
Yeah.
It's more than the nostalgia, like you said. They're trying to add like new content or like reimagine the story of the original. I'm not like super nostalgic by Mighty Ducks, but I like Emilio Estevez a lot. So it's kind of cool that he did something. So
yeah. And he's really fun in this. Really fun in it.
Okay.
What do you got, John?
Okay, I got something that's closer to the gory violence of Andrews for sure. So, and you know what? I feel like in any other context, this would not be buried treasure. I feel like people would be talking about this, but because of the Snyder Cut and Falcon and the Winter Soldier and all this other stuff that's been coming out lately, this kind of is. I don't see a lot of people talking about Invincible, the new Amazon Prime Video series.
Right.
The first 3 episodes just came out. Critics are talking about it, but they did this thing where they sent us screeners like a month and a half ago.
Yeah.
So a lot of people already saw the first 3 episodes, and those people aren't talking about it because they already watched it and they forgot. I rewatched it because I really, really like this show. Invincible, if you're not aware, it's based on the comic book series by Robert Kirkman. That's Walking Dead Robert Kirkman, who did this comic back in 2003. It ended, I don't remember when it ended. It's not that long ago, I don't think. But this is the animated version of it. And it's basically they're taking something kind of like Young Justice with a little bit of Spider-Man and making it, honestly, for lack of a better comparison, The Boys from Amazon, where it's about kind of how messed up being a superhero actually would be taken to its logical extremes. The voice cast, though, is one of the main hooks. So you can see there that's so the main character is voiced by Steven Yeun, of course, also from Walking Dead, who is just like killing it right now as an actor with Minari and Burning and all these roles that he's getting. But his dad is this like Superman character voiced by J.K. Simmons. So Sandra Oh voices the mother. Let me just, I won't tell you who they are, but like some of these voices include Lauren Cohan, Lenny James, Zachary Quinto, Gillian Jacobs, Jason Mantzoukas, Greg Griffin, Mark Hamill, Walton Goggins, Seth Rogen, Zazie Beetz, Clancy Brown, Mark Hamill, Mai Whitman, Max Burkholder, Mahershala Ali, Ezra Miller, Nicole Byer, Jonathan Groff, John Hamm, Jimon Hansu, Reginald Vell Johnson, and that's not even the full list.
I'm sorry. You're clearly just reading the Wikipedia of famous actors. This is clearly not a cast.
That's insane.
And
a lot of those people are infamous for being known, I guess, as like heroes in their own right. You talk about Mark Hamill. I mean, he's Luke Skywalker, and then I could go through the list, but I won't. Yeah, a lot of people on that list just got me excited.
Oh my goodness. And it really pays off. So the first 3 episodes are in Amazon Prime Video right now. Again, it's violent. It is gory. It doesn't start that way. And there is a twist in the first episode that is one of my favorite WTF moments in TV shows so far in 2021. It's fantastic. And I was just like, yes, I'm hooked immediately. So I hope people check it out for sure.
There you go. Very nice. We did it, guys. We did a podcast.
Yeah, we did. Woo!
It actually happened. Dreams do come true.
Thanks so much
for joining us today for Sif Pop. It is part of the Studio DNA Podcast Network. You can find out more about other shows on the network at studiodna.media or by searching Studio DNA in your podcast player. Huge thanks to Andrew for hanging out again today.
Thank you, buddy.
Huge thanks to producer Phil for producing both the audio and video show.
Hey, Phil.
And thanks to Drew for putting together the graphics for the show.
Big clap.
And thank you to Jon Negroni for hanging out with us again. John, where would you like people to check you out? I follow you on Twitter. It's always a good Twitter follow. Cinemaholics got the podcast. Where do you want to send people to?
Those are the 2 main places. Yeah, just Twitter it up. You'll find me at Jon Negroni. And yeah, if you want to check out my podcast that I do with Will Ashton on top talking about movies, because that's what we love. We also do comedy sketches and other fun, silly stuff that you might enjoy. So yeah, cinemaholics.com is where you can find that.
Very nice. Well, we appreciate you coming on again today and having a good conversation. Appreciate you being here. Also, if you want to be a Sif Pop member, you can do that at Patreon, patreon.com/SifPop. Lots of fun ways to connect with the podcast as well. You can leave a comment, rate it, review it, wherever you listen. Or you can email us, feedback@sifpop.com. And finally, if you're having a good time, your movie-loving friends will probably like the show too, so make sure you let them know about it, and that listening is much easier than finding a lost kitty cat bracelet. We will see you next week with Godzilla versus Kong, for real this time. And then also maybe Bad Trip on Netflix. I haven't fully decided what that second movie will be, but we'll definitely be talking about something next week. And we'll see you then.
Bye.
Thanks for hanging out on the video show, guys. Good to see everybody in the chat. Jay Bourgeois, good to see you. Stuart, Mark RG, thanks for hanging out with us and chatting along during the show. Really do appreciate that. So,
hey Phil, was I lagging out at all during the show? Because it felt like there were times when I thought I was talking over people, but I didn't notice they were talking.
We will we'll go ahead and end the show, and then we can talk about the technical aspects of everything as well. But everybody, welcome Phil to the show.
Hello.
We'll see you guys next week on the video show as well.